Hi everybody, this is Professor Jason Snart. I'll be your instructor for our English 1152 poetry class for the 12-week term. Here at COD, the English, or the 1152 class is sort of like the poetry analysis class. We have a poetry, pardon me, a poetry writing class, which is 2252 that I actually teach in the spring. So one of the things that I wanted to start off here by saying is that even though our class is sort of like the literature analysis class, maybe because I teach across both the creative writing and the literature sides of things, I see the two as really fundamentally connected. So if you took this class thinking it was maybe a poetry writing class, it's not that exactly. But what you'll find, hopefully pleasantly surprised, is that a lot of what we do is we read, poetry, but also try to engage with it in what I hope are fairly creative ways. We even do some creative writing of our own, although that's not really the focus of the class. So I feel like the study of and the creation of really any kind of literature, poetry, short stories, whatever, they can't be separated. So this isn't the poetry writing class, but hopefully you'll find some creative ways to engage with the stuff that we're looking at. So I'm going to do a ton of these little video announcement things throughout the term. It's mostly going to be me talking over a screen capture of our actual class. They're not clearly scripted. They're pretty informal. They usually run between 10, 15, sometimes maybe they get 20 minutes long, but that's pretty long. They're not like formal lecture stuff, but mostly it'll be review of material that we're looking at, reminders of maybe due dates and stuff like that. So it's not lecture material, so it is repeating basically what's in the course already. But I found that in talking with students, they definitely benefit from getting the visual or the verbal kind of walkthrough of what we're doing, even if I'm not necessarily adding new material. So it's really important that you watch the videos, but again, they're not like formal scripted lecture type things. And they do get a little bit long, like 10, 15 minutes, not the snappy 30-second or 3-minute videos that we are sometimes used to. But I always try to remind folks that if you were taking this class in the face-to-face version, even in the 16-week, let alone this slightly shorter 12-week, you'd be face-to-face in class, right, like Monday, Wednesday, Friday for 50 minutes at a time, so basically 3 hours of class. So a couple of 10 or 15-minute videos is actually relatively, you're getting kind of a bargain as far as the time commitment goes. So in this first video, I want to walk us through a couple pieces of the class just so you get used to kind of how to navigate things. I tried to make it as, user-friendly as possible, so you don't have to spend a lot of the class just figuring out like where things are and where you're supposed to click and what you're supposed to do. So we want to get that out of the way as soon as possible. I want to really stress that this class is meant to be kind of like it's an engaging experience. It hopefully doesn't feel really isolating where it's just you, the content, and kind of me out there in the internet world somewhere. Hopefully you feel like this is really a class of classmates, right? And you can connect with people and learn a little bit about them, learn the subject matter with them. So it's hopefully not what can sometimes happen, especially with online classes. It feels a little bit isolating, right? I'm really conscious of having this not be that type of experience. And then the other thing that I want to say directly, which isn't really related content-wise to our course, but is just a tip for success, and really this goes for any class. It certainly goes for any online class, so it's not just unique to this particular class, is just, the old adage about time management, especially with online. It's easy to say, right? Manage your time. Easy to say, but hard to do. Easy for me to say, hard for you to do, right? But the one little tip, the practical tip that I will suggest to you is like right away, right now, almost treat taking this class online as if it were face-to-face. So every like Tuesday and Thursday, you would come to class to sit in class. So you wouldn't also schedule yourself to work or to grocery shop or to do family obligations or whatever the million other things that we always have to do are, you would have that time as class time, right? Try to do the same thing, even though, because of the flexibility that we have, you don't always have to be, like we don't always have to be together in the same room at 11 o'clock on Tuesday and Thursday. But I am going to suggest that based on your schedule that you block out certain times in your calendar, whether you use a print thing or a digital thing or whatever tool you use to manage your time, block some time out that you know is going to be devoted to this course. Maybe you're doing other online courses, so you kind of maybe bundle them together a little bit, but block that time out just like you would if you had a face-to-face commitment. I think the trap that some people fall into is that they know the classes work, they know they're going to have to do the work, but they don't really block it out in the way that they would for other kinds of like physical face-to-face requirements. So it always kind of gets pushed to the last minute because it's the last thing. Once everything else is done, then you're going to do the online stuff. Some people forget about it. Some people don't budget enough time, so the work kind of gets done, but it's not really great and you're not really learning that much. Or we think, well, it's online, I don't have to physically be somewhere, so I can do it and like 3 or 4 other tasks at the same time. Again, we would never do that if we had the face-to-face commitment, but we think we can somehow manage it in the online space. And it just does, it's a recipe for disaster, for like frustration, kind of not a great experience, just nothing can go right. So my little tip for you right off the bat is to block time out to do this class as if it were face-to-face. The times can be different during the day or different days, however you want to do it. But, you know, block that time out. And of course, you budget time on a week-to-week or every other day or whatever differently based on, you know, checking to see what is kind of going on in the class and how much time is this going to take me. I'm personally like a big fan of more but smaller chunks of time as opposed to one humongous block where you're just going to sit down and do like all of your work for this class and maybe a bunch of others. It's too easy to get fatigued and just irritated, and again, kind of a recipe for not being successful. So that's my little overall tip. And my teaching kind of ethos or philosophy is really to get engaged with the work in creative ways, not always just read a poem, write an essay, read a poem, write an essay. That's not very effective, I don't think, for people, and not very engaging. And then also to have this class feel like a class that you're part of, not just you in some solitary way engaging with the stuff that we're looking at. So our course menu here, you'll always land at the announcements page. Again, it's really important that you watch these videos in their entirety. Time-wise, again, it's a pretty good deal based on what the time you would just be spending in class. Consider too, this is a 12-week, so you'd actually be in class even more, right, in the slightly compressed format. Everybody needs a Google account for our class. We're going to be using a bunch of Google tools, including the Sites Builder, which we're going to use to build websites, portfolios, we'll call them. If you already have one, most people do, that's totally fine, but if you don't, make sure you get one. So if you use Gmail, if you have a YouTube account, those are all Google products. So your Google credential or your Gmail credential, for example, will get you into any of the Google tools that we're using as well. But you can figure that out. If you have one, great. If not, get one. It takes like 5 minutes. Our syllabus is pretty standard fare for a syllabus. You know, basic course description, objectives that we'll be talking about throughout. So we always want to connect the work that we're doing on a day-to-day or unit-to-unit basis to the actual course objectives. So like, why are we doing this stuff? All the rest of it you can look at, a little reminder about the Google account. And then policies. Again, I won't spend a lot of time here, but late stuff, plagiarism, access accommodation, sort of the big picture stuff. There's no calendar exactly here or due date structure because that's all built into Blackboard, so there's no reason for me to duplicate it here. So again, pretty standard sort of syllabus. There's no textbook for the class. It's all open source, legal open source. It's not breaking copyright. And it's all linked to everything that we have to read is linked within each of the units, which we'll look at in just a sec. So again, the syllabus here is kind of big picture stuff. Take a look at it. You can always print out a copy if you want. But truthfully, it's not the kind of syllabus that you're going to need to come back to on a day-to-day basis to figure out, okay, what am I doing? What do I have to read? What's the assignment? That's all built into Blackboard. So that's the syllabus part. There's a poetry events listing here. That'll make a little bit more sense as we get deeper into the class, because one of the things you'll have to do for this class is attend a poetry event of some kind, a reading, maybe a book signing. But because we're all in different areas, we're not all going to do the same one. It could be on campus here at COD if that's convenient for you, but it doesn't have to be. And to facilitate this, what we actually have is an open document that all of us can edit. So if you know of something in your neighborhood that's going on, go ahead and add it to the list here. The attending or the reporting out from the attending the event doesn't actually happen until much later in our course. But because these things are, maybe not as common as some other stuff that, like a theater play or a movie or whatever, it's good to have this on your radar now. You don't have to wait to attend an event until way down in Unit 10 where you're reporting out on it, but have this kind of on your mind as a thing that you've got to do at some point between basically now and when we get to it a few weeks from now, way down in Unit 10 here. So if you're wondering what the poetry events is, that's what that is. Grades, right? You can access your grades once we get going. A little note about grading here, especially for discussion board stuff that you should probably look through. Really applying more to like the reply component, which we'll have in almost every unit that we do. I have virtual office space, so we'll set up an appointment if you want to connect with me. Obviously, we can connect face-to-face as well, but we'd always want to set that up. Email is the best way to get in touch with me. You can find my contact info here, and then just sort of like more general COD resources kind of stuff. So the main, in addition to like landing on the announcements page where you're going to watch video stuff, the main menu items that you'll always be coming into here are the Units tab. That's where all the work is assigned. The readings are available, access to discussion boards, all the class stuff you're going to find here. And then, of course, the due dates outlining when each of those things is due. So you'll notice that each of the units is listed here and their corresponding due dates. I'll come back to how this is set up in just a sec here. So we'll look at a typical unit. Might as well jump into Unit 1. Pretty manageable stuff here, just getting some things set up, and not a whole lot of content that we're getting into. Again, I'm conscious that people, are just getting used to how the class is set up, how to navigate things, all that kind of stuff. So we don't want a ton of like content work to do on top of that, right? So pretty basic here. So you're going to set up your portfolio, basically building your website. We're going to use the Google Sites Builder. You sign in with your Google credential. I'll call it like a portfolio, a website, an e-portfolio. That's all the same thing here. Notice that we have a Google Doc that is scrollable, that's embedded within the larger page. Almost every unit, instructions are going to be set up this way. I just find Google Docs way easier to work in as far as document design than working directly in Blackboard. So always just making sure, obviously, that you like scroll through the entire thing, not just in the Blackboard page. So it walks you through sort of like where to start here at the website, what buttons to look, to look for, how to get your website started. Again, buttons, giving the site a title, the page a title. The first page I'm asking you to build here is like an introduction or an about me page. So pretty informal, a few paragraphs about yourself, what you're interested in, what you're doing right now, if you have a major, if you are a COD student, do you intend to transfer somewhere? Maybe you're a student somewhere else. Just tell us about yourself. Throw a picture in there. It's really good to be able to see people, to really, again, sort of create that sense of community, like we're in this with other actual human beings. And then directions about what to do. So you're going to ultimately click the publish button here on your site. That's going to make it public. You can, in fact, basically hide it from it being found on the web. So if you're nervous about it being like publicly available, it really isn't, honestly. It's mostly just public to our course or contained in our class. And then what you're going to do is that URL that you created for your website, for your portfolio, you're going to come back up and then click into the Blackboard discussion board tool here. Click that, and then create a thread in the discussion board and just post your website URL. So we're kind of meshing a few different digital tools here as far as ones that are housed in Blackboard, which is a nice collection space. It's attached to the gradebook. It's like secure, right, because you're logging in as you. So all your work is saved, or your posts are identified by as you specifically. But we're using certain Google tools because they're way more flexible as far as like design and sharing stuff and that kind of thing. So kind of marrying those two together, and then notice that there's a reply component. You can visit as many classmates' portfolio sites as you want. Just take a look at what's out there. But you're going to use the discussion board tool here in Blackboard, the reply button, to reply to at least 4, down here, of your classmates' About Me pages. Maybe you have hobbies in common, or went to the same high school, live in the same town, have the same career academic goals, whatever the case might be. It's all pretty informal at this point. Again, you might want to review the discussion board grading just to get a sense of what I'm looking for, what a really good reply will look like. But we're not doing an initial post here. That's going to happen within your portfolio space itself. So again, one thing to get used to is navigating the class, how the pieces fit together, kind of like where to click to do what, and all that kind of stuff. So that's all you're doing for Unit 1. Again, pretty simple, straightforward, just getting used to the class, and then setting up your portfolio, getting that About Me page done, and then replying to, or looking at and replying to, a few of your classmates' About Me pages as well. So that takes us back to our due dates link here, which I would, again, sort of a time management thing, recommend clicking into every time you log into Blackboard, which should be pretty much every day. Maybe you're not spending time working on content every day, but just sort of to check in, remind yourself of exactly, okay, where are we? What are the dates involved? What's kind of coming up in the future? Keeping that always in the front of your mind. So as is explained here, our class has a sort of a double due date feature. Each of the units obviously has its own discrete due date. This is not a work at your own pace kind of a deal. All the main work is always due for that on that first due date, which will become Wednesdays, but because of our Tuesday class start, I wanted to give us a little bit more time here. So this first date, everything that is assigned in a unit is due as far as main work. So whether it's working in your portfolio or building something else or doing something else, if there's 3 things, if there's 5, if there's 2, they're all due on that first due date. The only thing that then we have for the second due date is any kind of reply component. So you can see the logic here. If we only had the one due date, we run the risk of so many people waiting a long time to do the main stuff that then people are kind of hamstrung and they're waiting till the last minute to do replies. But we have a little buffer built in so that main work is done here, and then you have a little turnaround time to do the replies. Having said that, though, you certainly don't have to wait until like this Thursday, for example, to post your portfolio URL. And once enough people have posted that, if it's early enough, you certainly don't have to wait until Friday to get in there and start doing replies. What you might find, in fact, as we go, is that, say, for Unit 2, you get your stuff done, you're kind of hanging out doing replies here and there, but you might also have started to look at and maybe even jumped into the work for Unit 3. So you might be sort of like across units in any given week, for example. I would caution against working ahead really far, right? You can work smart as far as the due dates go, but you really don't want to start trying to do a whole bunch of work, because often the video stuff will have maybe some clarifications, some common mistakes that I see folks make, I'll point out, but I only do them as we get to those units. And then because each of the units has that reply component, I've seen students try to get ahead, right, thinking they're working really efficiently, and then they forget to go back and do the reply, so they miss a whole bunch of points for the class, not because they don't get it or follow the content or their like main work isn't good, but they just like forget to do certain requirements, which really stinks. So be smart about the due dates, manage your time effectively, but really don't try to work ahead. That's not a super good move. Everything's open, right, in Blackboard, so you can jump into any of the units and kind of see what we're doing here. Not a bad idea, I think, to look a couple ahead, just to, again, give yourself a sense of how much time is this likely to take me. So back to my first point about time management, really budgeting, like, okay, here's my time during these 3 or 4 days during the week where I'm just going to sit down and do this work for the class. Don't let it fall to the once I get everything else done, then I'll jump in, or I'm going to do this while I'm at work or while I'm doing something else. Just not really a recipe for success. And you want to set yourself up to be as successful as possible, not just the grade part of it, but like to actually learn something, to engage with the material, to get to know your classmates a little bit, all that stuff that I talked about at the start. Okay, so hopefully that gives you enough to go on as far as sort of the shape of our class globally. Also getting into Unit 1, the due date structure, just a lot to get used to. A little bit longer video than what will normally be here, the 20 minutes, but again, compared with the time that you would be face-to-face in class, it's a pretty good trade-off, so hopefully not too bad. All right, so if you have any questions, concerns, if you see any like mistakes or obvious errors in the class, those can happen, just shoot me an email and let me know, and I will try to get back with you and obviously fix, whatever needs fixing as soon as I can. And I will check in with everybody in probably a day or two. Again, another video announcement, just looking at our class, probably a lot shorter than this one, but kind of keeps everything connected a little bit.